Hello everyone, welcome back to the Tent of Abraham. I'm Tamir Kreisman from Israel. This is Parashat Lech Lecha. Go, or go for you. Genesis 12 to 17. This one's called the Tent of Abraham. Oh yeah. I hope you're sitting down, you're going to need to take notes, probably listen to this a few times. This is not if you're just doing something else. There's a lot of things happening right now from Bereshit, Noach, and now Lech Lecha that you could see in the world, that the world is shifting tracks right now. We're getting onto God's time right now. Get with it. For 20 generations, the earth was in complete chaos. For 20 generations, the heavenly hosts were weeping as all of creation fell. For 20 generations, it seemed like a complete and utter failure on God's part. Chas v'shalom, I'm just making a point here. For 20 generations and almost 2,000 years, the question that was first presented by the Samech Mem was still looming in the heavens. What is man that you are mindful of him? You made man. This is your greatest creation. Look what he has done. Look what he made you do. Man left to his own devices will completely twist and corrupt every living thing under the sun. As we saw, this literally happened. And so it brought about the death of all flesh. But not without warning, of course. God was watching it happen as everything was not working the way it should, as species were being mixed not after their own kind. And so for 120 years, the earth and all its inhabitants were warned that their end is near. That the God who made them did not make them as they were, but they're the ones who made themselves as they are. They perverted themselves. When each individual lived the way that they saw fit, according to their own personal truth, while sexual immorality, public indecency, and open corruption and robbery only rivals our current generation. While those who excuse and tolerate this lewd behavior are just as likely to partake in it, as eventually they all did. No, is it really? Because look, if an immoral law in God's eyes, according to his halachot, is made legal, what do? Who do we follow? And if you don't know the answer to that immediately, you know where you are. You're in trouble. God's got patience. He is, after all, long-suffering. But at some point, enough's enough. But what if all mankind is given another shot and works together? Hear me now, okay? Towards a common goal for the greater good of humanity, like a fine-tuned watch or a well-oiled machine. What if humanity uses a type of hierarchical system where everybody knows their place because it's been assigned to them, and there are no disputes? Where everyone puts in their fair share of work depending on their given position. So far, okay. A system that can only work if everyone is equal. Except, of course, those who are in control. Now you're seeing it. Once individuality is taken away, and the average person can only do what is best for the system, that too can and will lead to disaster. In fact, it absolutely has. You want to see God move? You really don't. But in order to make God move, create a one-world government, a one-world order, where there are no borders, no religions, no possessions. Yeah, or like one of the most dangerous anarchists in recent times said, imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us, above us only sky. Imagine there's no countries, no possessions. Imagine all the people living for today. I don't have to because they are, and it's 2020. Right? Living for today. Forget about consequences. No heaven or hell. No responsibility. No countries. One world government. as citizens of the world. No possessions, because the system owns them, and owning anything, other than what you're given is illegal. This is okay. Go ahead. Here's the song. But, slap some sappy music on that and everyone chants it like it's something other than what it is. I get no words. If everyone does what they want, then there's chaos. Because my ideas are different than your ideas, right? My idea of a utopia is different than your idea of a utopia. Therefore, it cannot be, don't you see? It's not like, oh, leave me alone if I'm not hurting anybody else, but that's an impossibility. And if there are no consequences, then who's going to stop me from doing what I want? Let's say I like what you got, and I want to take it because I want it more than you. Somebody stop me. Unless it's those on the ground who are telling me what's what and what's not okay, right? Now, the entire earth was of one language and uniform of words. Vayhi, vayhi, vay, right? Vay. We learned about this. Whenever something starts vayhi, it's a uh-oh. It's not so good. Kol haaretz safa echat udvarim achadim. United. Let's all do something together. It's not only one language. Dvarim achadim, it's the same mind, right? Let's glorify who we are and all the things that we can do. We. With 3 capital W's, like the World Wide Web. And it came to pass when they traveled from the east that they found a valley in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, come, let us make bricks and fire them thoroughly. So the bricks were them for stones, and the clay was to them for mortar. And they said, come, let us build ourselves a city. Hava nivne lanu, for me, for us. Well, it's us right now, right? A city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make ourselves a name, lest we be scattered upon the face of the entire earth. You see, the worst human beings in the world are also the most well-informed, the best educated, and, probably some of the smartest individuals. But this is also why they are the dumbest people to ever walk the face of the earth. Because they know what's going on. And they know how it's going to end, and yet they do it anyway. Why? Well, you tell me why. Those who ignore history are destined to repeat it, right? Now, I'm not a prophet. I'm simply reading the Torah. So I can tell you what's going to happen based on what I'm reading, and so can you. And so what happens when most of the world does not? And if you understand the times that we are currently in, which I'm trying to tell you about, the shift that just took place, if you get with that shift, or see it, it's happening, but most of you still don't get it, but you will. If you get with that shift, you'll be able to see it as clear as day. And not only that, it's even been given to us in order. It's amazing. It's just like, okay. The world is in chaos. Sexual immorality and perversion is just the way of life. It's accepted. If you don't agree with that, you will be persecuted and punished for your opinions. Yeah. But that's the status quo. So naturally, we would not listen to the warning signs because, hey, we do what we want, right? No, that's okay. It's freedom. Love is love. Okay. So God doesn't send a flood this time. No, he doesn't send a flood this time, especially since his covenant of the rainbow has been desecrated along with everything else that is sacred and thrown back in his face. Immorality is life today, and sure enough, what is truly righteous in the eyes of the Lord will soon have to be done behind closed doors. It's already happening. It's already happening here in Israel. Who can pray what and where and how many people, and they will break into your house and they will break up a minyan. That's right, in Israel. A flood with boiling water that'll burn your skin right off? No, that's too good for us. It hurts, we die, that's it. How about something more sinister? How about we are just left to our own devices? We know this, that if we want to go, God lets us go, but if we turn around and we come back, he always accepts us, right? How about fear? Oh, the fear, right? How about the occasional freedom to walk around? Thank you for letting me walk more than 1 kilometer away from my house. You are so grateful, government. Marked on your face, of course. But, to live in constant fear, not from terrorists or, North Korea or China or Iran or Russia or whoever they tell you that the bad guy is this decade, right? But to be afraid of something that's seemingly invisible. I don't see people dropping dead in the middle of the street. Do you? I don't. That at any moment, though, that invisible thing, it can get you. Oh no! And then what'll happen? You'll be okay, most likely. Like, very, very likely. Oh, make no mistake. They'll let you know when it gets you as well. I mean, they have to monitor your movements, right? They have to know where you are all times for your safety. I mean, why else? But this, of course, is for the greater good of humanity. And if you don't comply, then you are harming your fellow man. And no one else likes that. Eyes will start to turn on you. Okay, no problem. Now make no mistake. We're not out of the chaos part just yet. We are shifting from that into this, you see, right? Okay. We are currently in the flood. If you didn't get that. There has to be something so very detrimental that will cause us to beg for some order to rise out of the chaos that we ourselves have brought about, that we ourselves have created, but would never take responsibility for. Never. No. It's that guy's fault, and it's the one before him's fault, and his fault, and everybody's at fault. It's everyone's fault. That definitely gets things done. Enter the man with all the answers. Oh, here we go. The one who will clean up our mess. The one who will save us and unite us as one. In the Torah, the guy's called Nimrod, okay? Nimrod, yeah. And Cush begot Nimrod. It's Nimrod, but because I can. He began to be a mighty man in the land. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babylon and Erech and Akkad and Calneh and the land of Shinar, right? Yeah, this is the same Shinars. And it came to pass when they traveled from the east, they found a valley in the land of Shinar and settled there. This guy who emerges, he doesn't really just come out of nowhere. You've seen him, or at least you've heard of him. He's been around, right? But he has something that you don't. He's got knowledge. He knows how things work. He knows the system. In Nimrod's case, it was the knowledge of the Garden of Eden and of God, right? He got the clothes from the Garden of Eden. So he had an understanding of how nature works, how everything in this world works. He also knew who governs the world. He knew this. He knows the system that was supposed to be put into play, which would render him powerless, so he created one of his own. One that mirrors the one given to us. You noticed how I said the things about the system, and so far so good until the slight tweak in the end. Only this one is actually in his own image. He gains a following. Remember, people are terrified. What, we were scattered before. What do we do? Who do we trust? You. Okay, we will give you everything. Just tell us what to do. Tell us what to do. People are broken, hungry, hopeless. People are losing their livelihoods. The only problem is to take out the one who gave the good system to begin with. Got to get God out of the way, right? And so a tower is built and everything that it represents. Now, God did not wait 120 years for this generation to repent. No. And they said, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make ourselves a name, lest we be scattered upon the face of the entire earth. Next verse. And the Lord descended to see the city and the tower that the sons of man had built. Whoa. Right away, God saw the kind of damage that can be done when there is a one world government. It's right here. When everyone unites together to do something bad, that's how you get God's attention immediately. And he intervened, and the Lord said, "Lo, they are one people, and they all have one language." And this is what they have commenced to do? Really? Now, will it not be withheld from them all that they have planned to do? Yeah, they're not having this. Nah, none of this. Come, let us descend and confuse their language, so that one will not understand the language of his companion. And the Lord scattered them from there upon the face of the entire earth, and they ceased building the city. It wasn't even the tower, it was the city. At one point in time, man was able to command the angels, and so they assisted them in building this tower and this city. At that point, it wasn't only that everyone spoke Hebrew, as they all did, but the language of their minds and actions were solely focused on one purpose. Again, we have power even if we don't understand languages right now, okay? Because it's not only about that, it's the intent behind it. Now, remove God from the picture, right? That's the point. As we've discussed, names, they mean something. In fact, they mean everything. We have a saying in Hebrew that we use until this day to describe a person with a name that suits them. It's kishmo kenhu, shmo, his name, keshmo, as his name, ken, yes, hu, him, okay? Or his name justifies his reputation, or he lives up to his name. This is taken from 1 Samuel 25:25 with Naval, Nivela. It's like a scumbag, right? There's a villain, obviously. It's like from, what is that, Sinestro, from the Green Lantern thing? The guy's name is Sinestro. He's obviously a bad guy, but he's gonna be a bad guy. See, that's like, okay. Anyway, and so after the flood and the Tower of Babel, the next 10 generations of man tell us another story. We discussed this last year, but we'll go through this again. Shem, the name, Arpachshad, the demons, Shalach, was sent, Ever, over, to, Peleg, divide, Re'u, the companion of God, Serug, woven, Nachor, luminescence, which represents the Shekhinah, Terach, found the spirit, and Abram, the father of many nations, right? So just like Noach to Abraham, it told us a story. Now here we have Shem, not Noach to Abraham, from Abraham, from Adam to Noach, and now we have Shem to Abraham. The name of demons was sent over to divide the companion of God, but the Shekhinah found the spirit that is the father of many nations. And so, for 20 generations, the earth was in complete chaos. For 20 generations, the heavenly hosts were weeping as all of creation had fallen, because again, they all submitted to Adam, and when Adam fell, he took everything down with him. For 20 generations, it seemed like a complete and utter failure, this man experiment. For 20 generations and almost 2,000 years, the question that was first presented by the Samech Mem was still looming in the heavens. What is man, that you are mindful of him? And in the year 1948, to the creation of man, he finally got his answer. And Terah lived 70 years, and he begot Abram, Nahor, and Haran. We don't have to get into all the details as we did last year. We know that Abraham grew up in a cave until he was 10, just going through some things. We knew that at age 3, he came to an understanding and belief in a creator and master of the universe. And we know that he spent the rest of his life searching for him. We know that he refused to bow down to statues and idols made of wood and stone. We know that he didn't recognize a man as God, no matter how powerful he was, or how many miracles that man performed, or how many fools around him said, "That's God." We know that God did not speak to him until he was way later on in his life. We know that he threw himself into fire for this invisible God who he never saw, who never spoke to him before. We know that he was the only man in the world who walked into the impurity and vanity and saw God even there. When Abraham was 50 years old, Nimrod, whose name means "we shall rebel," challenged him and his God. Nimrod would say that he worships the god of fire. Fire is the most powerful of all the elements. It's the most destructive. To which Abraham would reply, perhaps, but what about the rain that falls from the heavens? Surely the rain can defeat the fire, which is true. To which Nimrod replied, you know what? Right you are. We should worship the rain then. So then Abraham asked, but what about, the rain? Like, where does that come from? It comes from the clouds. Nimrod said, you know what? Let's worship them clouds. And so Abraham once again said, but what of the wind? Does the wind not command the clouds to gather in order to produce rain? Abraham was sharing his thought process with the world, and this is how he understood that there was a master to all things. It keeps on going higher and higher and higher and higher to the peak of your comprehension until you are given more by God. Not many, not a few, but one single governing entity with complete control over every speck of dust, every blade of grass, every drop of wind, every drop of rain, the sun, the moon, the stars, the wind, the clouds, the fire. There had to be, because if there wasn't, what's the point of anything? But everything worked so beautifully. The stars weren't crashing into each other. The sun would come up, the sun would set, the moon would rise, the moon would set. Everything is good. Somebody's pulling the strings here. Nimrod had had enough, and he said, fine, I know where you're going with this. What, he didn't know? Of course he knew. That's why he fought against it with everything he had. You see now, the worst human beings in the world are the most well-informed, educated, and extremely smart individuals, but this is also why they are the dumbest people on the planet. Because they know how it's going to end, and yet they do it anyway. Nimrod challenged Abram's invisible God to his own God of fire. He said, if you believe your God controls all things, then surely he can save you from the fire. Now remember again, this is the God which you have never seen, Abram. You have never heard from him. And you are the only person in the world who speaks of him. No one else saw him or heard from him. You may as well be making this stuff up right now. Are you willing to go into the fire for that God? Now I understand what you're thinking, right? Throughout history, many people have sacrificed themselves. They've thrown themselves in the fire. They've died for Kiddush Hashem, for the name of God. But this is after God has shown himself in the world. This is after God has established himself as God. No one has ever done this, ever. Ever. Are you willing to bet your life on it? Fire versus your God. We all know the story. The year was then 1998 to the creation of man. Abram was 50 years old. Naturally, it was time to leave. By the way, you know what happened in 1948, right? Yes, Abraham was born in the year 1948 of the world, but then in our year 1948, the state of Israel was established, officially recognized. Coincidence, right? Crazy coincidences. In fact, through his own understanding, he said it was time to go because it has never been spoken to anyone before. Abram knew that he needed to go to the land of Canaan. Noah was alive. He knew who Canaan was and that he himself cursed him because he carried the impurity of the serpent with him. In fact, the land of Canaan had the most difficult and vile inhabitants. We know this only later because God tells us to cleanse the land of all its inhabitants, right? But how would Abram know to go there? He didn't even tell Noah. No one knew about this. Now, we've discussed before how Parashat Lech Lecha is not in chronological order, because at that point, Abram was 75 years old. Once Lech Lecha begins at 75. But he's 70 years old, for instance, when there was a Brit Bein HaBetarim, the covenant of the pieces. In other words, he goes back and forth for about 20 to 25 years. Yeah, 20 to 25 years from Haran to the land of Canaan. But we'll catch up on that. Now, this is all basic math, okay? When he tells him he's 70 years old, the 30 years before the birth of Isaac, which Abram had to have been 70, not 75, because he was 100 when Isaac was born. We know the rest of the story, right? So the tribe of Ephraim miscalculated Moses coming from Egypt, and they left 30 years earlier because of this. So going back to the year 1998, that's when Abram realized it was time to move. Again, before I continue, you are Abraham, okay? In this story. The world then is the world today. See what happens. Okay, let's move in case you missed that. So, 1998, it was time to move, but it didn't actually happen until the year 2000. And not in his own accord, but rather because Nimrod decided to kill him again. He let him go after the fire. Whoa, okay, your God's cool, no problem. 2 years later, and he didn't go anywhere. 2 years later, okay, now Nimrod's like, well, I can't have this guy walking around. So look at that, huh? Would you look at that? A Jew who knows when to get out and when it's beyond obvious that they don't belong where they are. All right. And so it was the moment that Abraham began to move in the direction of the land of Canaan that he ushered in the age of Torah. The moment he started walking. As far as all the timelines are concerned, from the moment that Adam was created, time began. Remember, time is our space. Otherwise, it would begin and end. That's it. Okay, you get that. And just like the 6 days of creation, we have 6,000 years time limit to the world as we know it. Meaning, in this reality, this 6,000 year timeline is divided into 3 sections. The first 2,000 years is the age of Tohu, chaos. As we see, Abraham's born in 1948, right? Gets tossed in the fire, and then he starts walking the land of Israel, land of Canaan then. That is the second 2,000 years. 2,000 years of Torah. Destruction of the second temple. The last 2,000 years we are currently in, they're called the age of Messiah, the Messianic age. Okay? So that's what it is. So, from chaos to Torah, Abraham, being born in 1948, began the walk to the land the year 2000, and so you can say that he ushered in the age of Torah, which he did, right? Because he started following Torah even before there was Torah. But he took his time because his family were with him. After his brother was lost in the fire that he was saved from, his brother's like, well, if he lives, I'm going with this guy. But if not, then yeah, Nimrod, you the man. Abraham was fine. He jumped in. His heart was not pure. He got burnt naturally. So, Abraham got closer with his parents who completely repented from their idolatrous ways, right? They were big idol worshippers. And by the way, what is an idol worshiper? You know what an idol worshiper is? Not necessarily somebody who builds something of wood or stone or gold or silver and bows down to it. Idolatry, by definition, is anything that controls your actions. You understand? Guess what's controlling the world's actions today? Fear. Fear is controlling everyone's actions today. The world is an idolatry, whether you like it or not. You could believe in God, but if fear controls your actions more than anything else, guess what, son? So we're going to read just a bit from the book of Jasher so we understand the timeline, okay? Now therefore hearken to my voice. I'm just going to read through it really quickly. And let us arise and go to the land of Canaan, out of the reach of injury from Nimrod. This is Abraham, he's telling his father. And serve thou the Lord who created thee in the earth, and it will be with thee that he cast away all the vain things which thou pursuest. That sounds like a great plan, to cast away all the vain things that thou pursuest. And Abraham ceased to speak when Noah and his son Shem answered Terah, saying, Truth. Go. And Terah hearkened to the voice of his son Abram, and Terah did all that Abram said, for this was from the Lord, and the king should not cause Abram's death. God still has not spoken to Abraham yet. And Terah took his son Abram and his grandson Lot, the son of Haran, and Sarai his daughter-in-law, the wife of his son Abram. So Sarah was Abram's niece, and Lot was his brother-in-law, also his nephew. They kept it in the family. The wife of Abram and all the souls of his household, and went with them to Ur-Kasdim to go to the land of Canaan. And when they came as far as Haran, they remained there. In other words, they didn't make it even. For it was exceedingly good land for pasture, and of sufficient extent for those who accompanied them. look what happens. You get distracted by beautiful land. We could start a business here. Okay. And the people of the land of Haran saw that Abraham was good and upright with God and men. Works both ways. And that the Lord his God was with him. And some of the people of the land of Haran came and joined Abraham. And he taught them the instruction of the Lord and his ways. How would he know this? What is the instruction of the Lord? He learned the basic 7 Noahide laws from Noah. And these men remained with Abram in his house, and they adhered to him. And Abram remained in the land 3 years. And at the expiration of 3 years, so he's 55 right now, 3 years, the Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, 55, I am the Lord who brought thee out of Ur Kasdim and delivered thee from the hands of thine enemies. And now therefore, if thou wilt hearken to my voice, yes, and keep my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. What commandments? What statutes? What laws? They weren't given yet, but they're gonna be. Then I will cause thy enemies to fall before thee, and I will multiply thy seed like the stars of the heaven, and I will send my blessings upon all the works of thy hands, and thou shalt lack nothing. Arise now, take thy wife and the belongings and all that belongs to thee from the land to the land of Canaan, and remain there. And I will there be unto thee for a God, and I will bless thee. And Abraham rose, took his wife Sarah and all belongings to him, and he went to the land of Canaan, as the Lord had told him. And Abraham was 50 years old when he went from Haran. And Abraham came to the land of Canaan. Wait a minute, 50 years old. Timeline's off over here. That's the English version of Jasher for you. Anyway, because he was thrown in the fire when he was 50 years old, remember, and then 2 years later, and then it says plus another 3 years, so that's 55. And Abraham came to the land of Canaan and dwelt in the midst of the city, and there he pitched his tent amongst the children of Canaan, inhabitants of the land. And the Lord appeared to Abram when he came to the land of Canaan, and he said to him, this is the land which I give to thee and to thy seed after thee forever, and I will make thy seed like the stars of the heaven, and I will go unto the seed. I will give unto thy seed for an inheritance all the lands which thou seest. And Abraham built an altar in the place where God had spoken to him, and Abraham there called upon the name of the Lord. This we'll already see in our Parsha, but things happen in between. At that time, at the end of 3 years of Abraham's dwelling in the land of Canaan, in that year, Noah had died. Now look, this is how the timeline catches up, which was the 58th year of Abraham's life. In other words, what we read before about the timeline when God spoke to him when he was 50 was absolutely wrong. It was after 3 years that he was in the land of Canaan. So it's 3, 3, and 2, that's 8. Abraham was 58 years old when Noah died. And all the days that Noah lived were 950 years, and he died. Now, look at the incredible hints, the remazim over here. The numerical value of the name Noach, as we discussed, is 58, which is also chen, grace. And that's how old Abraham was when he died, because Noah found favors in the eyes of God. That's why it was, V'noach matzah chen b'nei Hashem. And now, from the seed of Noah, through his son Shem, 10 generations later, Abraham was born. Adam was created, circumcised. Noah was born circumcised. Abraham was commanded to circumcise. See the continuity over here. Individuals. And Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, he and his wife and all belonged to him, and all those that accompanied him, together with those that joined from the people of the land. But Nahor, Abraham's brother, and Terach his father, and Lot the son of Haran, and all belonging to them dwelt in Haran. In other words, Lot is still there. He didn't go with him this time. In the 5th year of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, the people of Sodom and Gomorrah and all the cities of the plain revolted from the power of Shedor Laomer, king of Elam. From all the kings of the cities of the plain served Shedor Laomer for 12 years and given them yearly tax. But in those days, in the 13th year, they rebelled against him. And in the 10th year of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, there was a war between Nimrod, king of Shinar, and Shedor Laomer, king of Elam. And Nimrod came to fight with Shedor Laomer. And then it goes back and forth between the battles of these guys over here. And then we'll just skip a whole bunch because there was a point to this. Oh, and Abraham went and returned to the land of Canaan according to the word of the Lord. This is where we're catching up with our Parsha. And Lot, the son of his brother Haran, went with him. And Abraham was 75 years old. Here we go. When he went forth from Haran to return to the land of Canaan. Lech Lecha. Okay. And he came to the land of Canaan according to the word of the Lord. And he pitched his tent and dwelt in the plains of Mamre. and with him was Lot his brother's son, and all the belonging to him. And the Lord again appeared to Abraham, saying, in other words, it had happened already before. To thy seed I will give this land. He said, build an altar to the Lord who appeared to him, which is still to this day in the plains of Mamre. Okay, now, sorry, needed to be said. Just so you see, the moment that the power of God began to rise in the world, all the magic tricks and might of the armies of men and angels became powerless. They all started falling apart. Even Nimrod, he got his butt kicked over here. Nimrod lost. He was a mighty man. He had the garments of Adam and Eve. He was unstoppable. No. Abraham's rising, you're going down. End of story. So, all the nations will fight one another, and they'll all take each other out, and who shall remain? Okay. So let's ask a great question here. How come all this great backstory of the cave and the idols and the fire pit and the persecution and even further, all that stuff, what we discussed last year about the birth of Abraham with the stars in the sky, and they came over the house and the star swallowed 4 other stars, they start all these religions from these stories and whatnot. How come it's not in the 5 books of Moses, right? Why does the parasha begin with Lech Lecha, go for your sake? We see that Abram was bouncing back and forth between the land of Canaan and his family in Haran. They didn't all come with him. Sometimes it's difficult to leave it all behind. Sometimes it's a 20-year process. In this case, it was. But the reason none of this stuff is written in the Torah is because ultimately it's not relevant. If someone were to read about a boy who grew up in a cave and was the first to seek out the creator of all things and die for his sake, even though it had never been done before, they would have a hard time moving forward, right? How could we possibly live up to that standard? We can't all be Abraham. That's why. Leave that behind. That's an extra biblical text. That's in the Midrash. You can read about it, but that's not what God wants you to read. That's not what's put in the Torah right here. So here's the thing. You don't have to go through what Abraham did because he already went through it for you. You don't have to sacrifice your son. He already did that, so no one else would ever have to do that. Sure, you can read the history and the backstory and all that stuff. God is the one who decided on the 5 books of Moses. Okay, and as far as we're concerned, he said that this man's story begins in Lech Lecha, which means that all our stories begin in Lech Lecha. We all have a history, okay? I've shared some of mine. Kind of embarrassing and shameful, but whatever. You got it too. Don't judge me. Some of us were exemplary human beings, and some of us were a little better than the animals. But none of that matters, you see. It's not about what you have done. It's about what you are going to do and what you are doing now. You want equality? In a godly way? Or in a social justice way? You want a participation badge? Here it is. Here's your equality in a godly way. Lech Lecha. Show me your walk and I'll show you who you are. Which is why it says, and the Lord said to Abram, go forth from your land and from your birthplace and from your father's house to the land that I will show you. Was Abram not familiar with the land at this point? Sure he was. We just established it. He's been there several times before. But only on a certain level. You see, even the great Abraham, the man who gave God a reason to create humanity in the first place, needs to walk step by step, level by level, struggle by struggle. Son, here's your formula to get to me. Leave your land, because it's not the land that I chose for you. Leave your birthplace, because if you are born, then you can die. Therefore, it's finite. Leave your father's house, because our emotional attachments are our greatest trials in this world. The binding of Isaac. He was about to be tried by that. Plus, I need you over here, not over there. To the land that I will show you? No. To the land that I will show you, to the world. El haaretz asher ar'eka. The land of Israel has special spiritual properties that exist in no other place in the world. Anyone who's ever been here can attest to that. People get here, they start crying on the floor. I'm home. Welcome back, brother. How's your neshama doing? As everyone in the world wants to claim this land as their own, and they have been for thousands of years. But you, Abram, if you let go and come here with your eyes forward, I will show you who you are and show the world who you are. You know where the land is, geographically speaking, but everyone's going to know who you are, and you are going to truly see who you are. So come here. If you do this, you will receive everything that you ask for. Now, this is not a deal that God makes with just anybody. You have to understand, because there cannot be conflicts of interest. So if anyone ever tells you that whatever you ask from God, especially if you're praying in someone's name, that he's going to give you, ask yourself, how's that been working for you thus far? If you've been praying like that and you haven't gotten everything that you asked for, because everything, right? Maybe question at least the validity, because there seems to be conflict in those words. The few people that God chooses to give whatever they ask for are people that God knows will never conflict his will or plans based on their requests. These are people that God loves keeping an open tab with, because they're essentially working with God. They're doing his work. Everything they ask for fulfills the word of God. Go on, my son, to this land with this consciousness, with this mindset, with this desire, under these conditions, and you will see what you have not been able to see and understand what you have not even began to have thought of, to the place that I will show you. Because you have not seen where you will go, you and your descendants after you. Whoa. Lech Lecha. That's the numerical value of 100. It's also a hint. Your descendants. Abraham was 100 years old when he begot Isaac. And when you are aligned, you will see, because then I will show you. You're there. You see it, and you'll see when the Lord appears to him. You are now going to see this, and I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will glorify your name, and you shall be a blessing. Since when does God ever say that any other name shall be glorified aside from his own? But here, right here, he says, I will glorify your name. What? Are we getting a clearer picture? Veheye bracha, and it will be a blessing. Bracha comes from the supernal binah of understanding. As we're reading this, as God is speaking this, Abraham is receiving the words spoken. Just like Genesis 2:4. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created. Behi baram, in Abraham, on the day that the Lord God made earth and heaven. Know this verse. Genesis 2:4. God has created the world for Israel. And Israel starts with this man right here. Not necessarily because of how he lived before, even though he outlived anyone in his merits and deeds and what he did. You can't. He was the first. So there's nothing to even compare it to. You can't. Don't worry about it. Because it doesn't start when he threw himself in the fire. It starts when God said, hey, go. Leave it all. Go. And he says, okay. Nothing before that. It's not about how you lived before. It's how you live once you are called. And I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse, and all the families of the earth shall be blessed in you, through you. Now is a strange thing to say. Why would anyone curse a guy who lives according to the word of God? Well, what's the status of God-fearing Jews in the world today? Or in the past 3,800 years? Much cursing, I think. Yes? Okay. No problem. Any country or civilization throughout the history of the world that has welcomed Jews and gave them their freedom to practice their religion have prospered. Look it up. The moment they renege, they fall apart shortly after. Don't do that. Obviously, let's not talk about persecute. Just look around, not a single one of them still stands. But the spirit of Amalek, that's still everywhere. And so all those who bless you shall surely be blessed. And those who curse you, I wouldn't want to be them. This even holds to Jews, okay? You can't go around cursing your own people. What are you, nuts? And all the families of the earth shall be blessed through you. Because Abraham is about to elevate the earth as he is the only connection to heaven. Heaven and earth and heaven. In other words, he's going to elevate the people with them. In fact, you could say that Abraham is the new and improved Adam. We've discussed this before. And so who are those who are cursed? More specifically, umekalelcha aor, those who curse you, aor, which comes from the word arur, accursed. Where's the last time we saw this? It's going to get crazy now. Here's our direct connection to where he is physically, where he came from, and where his job in the world is. Genesis 9:24. And Noah awoke from his wine, and he knew what his small son had done to him. And he said, "Cursed be Canaan, Arur Canaan. Eved avadim yelechav. He shall be a slave among slaves to his brethren." Slave among slaves. Why didn't Noah curse Ham for doing what he did? We'll get to that a little bit later. Because Ham had already been blessed by God. So, if Ham, who did what he did, and we're also going to find out why, who beforehand had been blessed by God, and Noah, the man who was perfect before God, could not curse him, how much more so anyone who blesses Abraham or his seed will be blessed, and those who curse him will surely be cursed. And so that the last time it was said, when was the last time that this was said? Well, that was the last time it was said. Where was the first time it was said? Genesis 3:14. V'omer Hashem Elohim el hanachash ki asita zot arur ata. And the Lord God said to the serpent, because you have done this, cursed be you. The serpent who corrupted Eve, who infected Adam, who begot offspring, who corrupted everything on the earth, who were destroyed in the flood, somehow lived on in Ham, who imparted the seed of corruption and created Canaan. The seed of the serpent is not a physical seed. It is of spiritual nature, and anyone can get the filth on them or within them. In the same token, they can cleanse themselves of it completely. Why was Abraham commanded to go to the land of Canaan? Perhaps to undo the curse of the serpent that had spread within all mankind. See the connection here? Canaan, land of Canaan, anybody? And Abram went, and the Lord spoke to him, and Lot went with him, and Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. Here we have his age. And Abram went, there was no delay. He got the call, he took his bag, and left. Probably had a to-go bag, knowing this guy. There was no, I wonder what the weather's gonna be like. It wasn't, I'm really sensitive to heat and seasonal allergies. No, there was none of that stuff. I wonder where I'm gonna live. There wasn't even, I wonder, how I'm gonna make a living, which might have been the most logical and excusable excuse of all these other excuses. He didn't worry. He didn't think about it. He didn't ponder, and he certainly didn't delay. He believed, he went. And Lot went with him. We're going to explain this one in a minute. But I will tell you that the numerical value of the name Lot is 45, just like Adam. Not saying that Lot is Adam, not at all. Simply saying that he went with Abram. And why does it say that he was 75? Why did it put it right there? Aside from him obviously being 75. It's another hint of the level of Abram. At this point, 75 is the numerical value of Kohen, priest, which means that he was established as the Sphira of Chesed, mercy, which is on the right. You already know this. Below Chesed, on the right, we have Netzach, eternal, which is the Sphira of Aaron, the high priest on earth. And above Abraham, on the right side as well, which archangel sits? It's Michael. And who is Michael? He is the supernal high priest. All this is on the right side. Michael, Abraham, and Aaron. Abraham is indeed connecting the heavens and the earth with the earth and the heavens. And when was Abraham established as a priest? While he was still in Haran. At the moment he began to move, which was as soon as he got the call. Now furthermore, how are we connecting Abraham to any kind of priesthood over here, right? I mean, Kohen is also a title, right? It's not a name. It is a name now, but you get it. Psalms 110 verse 4. The Lord swore and will not repent. You are a priest forever because of the speech of Melchizedek. Nishba Hashem velo enachem ata kohen leolam al dibrati Melchizedek. Okay, Melchizedek, who appears in this very parsha, is none other than who? Shem, the son of Noah. Now remember, although it comes later in the parsha, this had already taken place. This part came before. 14:18, and Melchizedek, the king of Salem, Shalem, brought out bread and wine, and he was a priest to the Most High God. Vehu kohen la'el elyon. But as we discussed last year, the priesthood was taken from Shem and given to Abraham. How so? And he blessed him, and he said, Blessed be Abram to the Most High God, who possesses heaven and earth. Now, here we go again with the name Abraham and heaven and earth together. And blessed be the Most High God, who has delivered your adversaries into your hand, and he gave him a tithe from all. And here was his mistake. He first blessed Abraham before he blessed God. You don't do that, right? And that was it for him. So the title of Melchizedek was removed from Shem and it was given to Abraham. In fact, it was always his from the creation of the world, right? People just got to keep it warm in the meantime, right? Like the Canaanites in the land of Israel. Abraham was to balance out the judgment of creation by becoming the attribute of mercy. Remember, creation was created by the name Elohim, which is judgment. Okay, it's on the left side. Abraham is on the right side, mercy. And the final hint alluding to this is that the word in the verse Haran, which is the last word over there, which has the numerical value of 258, which is 3 times the word Elohim, which is 86, representing judgments. Malki, tzedek, Malki, king, tzedek, justice, judgment. With Abraham, judgment, tzedek, becomes tzedakah, with the hay. Avraham, charity, also known as chesed, the king of chesed. Instead of the king of judgment, but righteous judgment. Yes. And Abram took Sarai his wife and Lot his brother's son and all their possessions that they had acquired and the souls that they had acquired in Haran, and they went to go to the land of Canaan, and they came to the land of Canaan. So, this is very simple, a very simple understanding of the text. We see many things. We'll break this down. Sarai indeed was his wife, meaning that she had the same spiritual merit as Abraham. We'll come to see that she was on an even higher spiritual level. Lot was a troubled young lad, who Abram took it upon himself to correct. Come hang out with me, son. We'll exercise whatever you got going on, right? All they had possessed to show us that those who truly stick to God always gain and never lose. You're never going to lose if you spend money to glorify God. It just doesn't work, right? You get it back tenfold. The souls they had acquired, converts, that's allusion also to conversion, and they went to go to the land of Canaan, and they came to the land of Canaan. Why would I say it like that? Meaning they did not get sidetracked this time. They didn't get ambushed, but they were set on a mission and they completed it. Because last time they were on their way to the land of Canaan, they got as far as Haran. Now, they went to the land of Canaan and they came to the land of Canaan straight up. Here we go. This is the Lech Lecha. On the more spiritual aspect, Abraham had to convince his wife with pleasant words, because according to halacha, a man cannot force his wife to leave her birthplace or her home, wherever it is. My dad had to really convince my mom to make Aliyah back in the 80s because Israel back then was not what it was like today. But she doesn't regret it. Do you, Mom? I love you. Lot's line would eventually lead to the birth of King David. And he knew this too. And neither Abraham nor Sarah could have fulfilled their calling but in the land of Canaan. And on an even deeper level, if Abraham is the reincarnation and rectification of Adam, which we've discussed this plenty of times before, is Abraham, Isaac, and perfected through Jacob. Jacob had the same appearance as Adam. Okay, that would surely make Sarah the reincarnation and rectification of Eve. They were, after all, responsible for bringing new souls into the world, corrected souls into the world. And so who is Lot? In our story, Lot is the serpent. Okay, but wait, we'll touch on it soon. We know this because of his actions, okay? Again, there are so many different ways, there are different dimensions and angles to look at the same thing. 70 faces. And Abraham knew what his mission was, which is why he knew through divine understanding that the place he needed to go was to the land of Canaan. God never said in the beginning, go to the land of Canaan. He's like, I think we got to go there. And Noah's like, I think you're right. Let's go. Okay. And it said it was from God. Abraham had the ability to see God in all things, with the full understanding that God is the only one who creates and governs this world. When there is evil or darkness, he knew that God is in control, which is why he entered into the land of giant abominations without fear. The land of Canaan, even back then, was known to have giant inhabitants, leftovers from the days of the flood. There were giants on the earth in those days and also after. Forget about all the other abominations in the other countries. What is going on here? Which is why he entered into the land of giant abominations without fear. And he saw them. They were everywhere, all around him. He was the only one. It was only when he left the land that he feared, because he understood the connection to the land when he had to go down to Egypt, right? It says the land was starving. It wasn't starving because of food. It was starving because there was a spiritual drought, but he went to start sowing the spiritual seeds in Egypt. He had to go there because, descendants and whatnot. He knew that he was called to cleanse the earth, and it all starts with cleansing oneself. We are Abraham, okay? This is how you fix the world. You fix you. You are the world. God creates light and dark equally. Good and evil equally. As we discussed, the tree of knowledge is not a bad thing. How could it possibly be? It was one of the trees in the Garden of Eden. And part of the tree that God said to eat from together with the other trees. When one seeks knowledge for their own gain, however, that will surely bring about death, which is what happened. It's not about ignoring it. It's about owning it, understanding it, and controlling it. Have you ever watched the Dog Whisperer, right? What's his name? Caesar guy? One of the things he said that makes, what we're discussing here a little bit more easier to understand. He said, when a pet dog is not disciplined, it actually suffers because it doesn't know what it's supposed to do. This is its nature, right? As a result, it causes havoc because there's no definition, there are no boundaries. Same goes with children. What happens when you don't tell a child no and give them everything you want? You get the generation of 2020, ladies and gentlemen, the end of civilization as we know it, because there's nothing civil about anything that's happening. No boundaries. Anyone can do anything. Tell me I'm wrong. My opinion trumps yours, but why? There is no self-identity. Anyone can be whatever they want because they feel like it. That's hilarious, don't you think? There are no borders. We're all citizens of the world and so on. You get it? Okay, good. We're up to speed. Abraham was the first line of defense and rectification to restore order to a broken world. He mastered his evil inclination. He didn't ignore it. He didn't put dirt over it or put it under the carpet. And because of this, he politely and successfully sent it away 13:5. We're going to be jumping right now, okay? Because this happened earlier. 13:5. And also Lot, who went with Abram, had flocks and cattle and tents. As the good inclination grows, the evil inclination equally grows. That's the only way you can be tested. Again, it's always equal. It's how everything was created. Okay? At the end of days, third temple is built, there's no more evil inclination. That's it. But up until then, it's here. It's part of it. We need it. And the land did not bear them to dwell together, for their possessions were many, and they could not dwell together. This land is the supernal land, as Abraham grew so powerful that he realized he can no longer carry the evil inclination with him. In fact, it was a waste of its time, and they could not dwell together. And there was a quarrel between the herdsmen of Abram's cattle and between the herdsmen of Lot's cattle. Not between Abram and Lot, but it was going to come to that. That was a warning sign. He paid attention. And the Canaanites and the Perizzites were then dwelling in the land. Why does it say that there? What's that got to do with the thing? We'll see. This shows us basically that Lot was already taking up the idolatry of the inhabitants of the land. And Abraham said to Lot, "Please let there be no quarrel between me and between you and between my herdsmen and between your herdsmen. For we are kinsmen. Achim anachnu. We're brothers." That's what it says. But ultimately, good and evil cannot mix, right? Light has been separated from the darkness. At first, they existed together. Otherwise, it wouldn't have said that God separated light from the darkness. They were together, light and darkness. And no. This is how it is. Okay? And so this is how it remains. And so the man of God has to separate from the idolater, period. Now again, yes, the tent of Abraham, everybody comes in, but I said you leave your idolatry at the door. At the door. He sent him away over here because he was an idolater. Do you understand this? Abraham understood this. He recognized the serpent. He acknowledged its function, and he had a conversation with it. Is not all the land before us? Please, part from me. Look how nicely he's asking, part from me. If you go left, I will go right. If you go right, I will go left. Hey, take what you want, but you got nothing here, right? The land of Canaan was the spiritual manifestation of the serpent's infestation. The serpent and the Yetzer Hara, the Samech Mem, they're all one and the same. They all kind of fused over there. So why not go anywhere else around here and have your way with the other inhabitants of the land? You'll be more successful with them than you will be with me. You know this. So now go be useful to God. Go take your serpenty ways and go take it elsewhere. You got nothing here. I'm sorry. And Lot raised his eyes. Listen to this. And saw the entire plain of the Jordan, and it was entirely watered before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. Why is it mentioning Sodom and Gomorrah? Like the garden of the Lord. Was the garden of the Lord's Garden of Eden, right? What are we talking about? Serpent? Like the land of Egypt, as you come to Tzor, land of Egypt, foreshadowing. Boom. Here, your home. Look how beautiful everything is. It's so pleasant to the eye, as the serpent was telling Chava, right? Surely because of how it looks and seems, it must be good, right? Who's controlling Lot? Abraham saw what was going on there. Sodom and Gomorrah, great choice. I hear the beautiful seasons this time of year. Need I say more? And Lot chose for himself the entire plain of the Jordan, and Lot traveled from the east, and they parted from one another. Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelt in the cities of the plain, and he pitched his tents until Sodom. And the people of Sodom were very evil and sinful against the Lord. Read this in Hebrew, if anybody paid attention last week. V'anshei Sodom ra'im v'chata'im la'Hashem me'od. Very, very much. Now, I'm sure we all know what went down in Sodom and Gomorrah, yeah? And if you don't know, do you remember why God destroyed the world back in Noah's day? The same reasons that they're flourishing right here. Sexual immorality and corruption. Gezel, robbery. Again, I don't know if I explained it. Gezel is something that you cannot return. In other words, there's a law called gezel shena. If you wake up somebody from their sleep, you cannot pay them back sleep. So it's something that you take away from them that you cannot return. So it's worse. You can't even pay them back monetarily speaking. Abraham was able to bring to God anyone who entered into his tent. But you got to leave your idolatry at the door. But Lot, his own nephew, his own brother-in-law, Sarah's brother, he fell into idolatry. I would even venture to say that when Lot moved to Sodom and Gomorrah, he caused an even greater decline than what it was. He was carrying that with him. He might have just been living his own life, but he carried that and it spreads like a virus, like poison. And I say this because it says, and he pitched his tent until Sodom. What does it mean to pitch a tent? Biblically speaking, of course, to establish oneself, to connect both in the physical and in the spiritual. And that's where he chose to connect. And only then the text says that the people of Sodom were very evil and sinful against the Lord. After he did this. Ra'im, that's the same spirit. So if the land of Canaan was bad, Sodom and Gomorrah, that was the worst. So bad that God had enough of them, right? But now I want to show you something beautiful. This is also very humbling. The only reason Lot was saved, as we'll see in next week's Parsha, is by the merit of Abraham, who saw the bloodline of David, of the Mashiach, who would redeem the world, would come out of Lot, right? And then Judah, whatever. This is what I meant when I discussed the Kalipah that offended so many of you. Most do not comprehend what I'm saying, but I'm trying to give you the vision of Abraham right now. We're starting from Bereshit and then Noach, but now our walk begins with Abraham with Lech Lecha. Our walk. Get on this cycle. For you, Lech Lecha, this is for your sake. All of creation, both good and evil, are from God. Evil is not good, but it is necessary for good to do its thing. The land of Canaan came about because Ham had sexual relations with his mother. We discussed this last year, but if not, here's a quick thing. Genesis 9:21, and he drank of the wine, and he became drunk, and he uncovered himself within his tent. Vayesht min hayayin vayeshakel vayitagel betoch ohalo, spelt with a hey, ohala, female term, instead of ohalo, which is masculine, alluding to the fact that it was his wife's tent. As a result, Canaan was born. Who's the father of Canaan? Ham, not Noah. Cursed be Canaan, remember? Why? And Ham, the father of Canaan, here we go, saw his father's nakedness, and he told his two brothers outside. Now this is the strongest hint in the Torah that it gives without spelling it out for us, because even the Torah is the epitome of tzniut, of tsanua. Wow. Look it up. Leviticus 18:8. Ervat eshet avicha lo tegale ervat avicha hi. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father's wife. It is your father's nakedness. As a result, the son of having having sexual relations with his mother, seed of the serpent, an abomination was born that would sit in the holiest place on earth and become the land of Canaan. And within the land of Canaan, as a result of a daughter having sexual relations with their father, in the abominable land of Canaan would lead to the birth of Messiah, who would be the end of the abomination. What? This is something that Abraham saw play out. It's got to come from within. He set this up. Noah had his tent. Lot had his tent. What did Abraham do? How did he see all this? We're moving back now. 12:6. And Abraham passed through the land until the place of Shechem, until the plain of Moreh, and the Canaanites were then in the land. ויעבור אברהם בארץ עד מקום שכם עד אלון מורה, והכנעני אז בארץ. ויעבור. This is a hint right here to God's 72 names, the 72 names of God. Ayin Bet, 72, and the Resh Yud Vav are the 260 letters of those 72 names. In other words, Abraham was seeing and experiencing God in the land, throughout the land. Vayavor. Until where? Shechem. And what is Shechem? First of all, it means side or section or portion. Like when Jacob told Joseph, I will give you a Shechem echad alachecha. I will give you an extra portion above your brothers. But what does this mean? It means he saw the whole thing by passing through it. But passing through what? Who was buried in Shechem? It was Yosef, right? Yosef HaTzadik. What did we learn last week from Noach? Noach ish tzadik tamim, Yosef HaTzadik. The attribute of tzadik is the chesed. As a yesod, foundation, which represents the covenant, the yesod. And from where we are, which is malchut on the bottom, we need to connect to that yesod, because we are underneath. We have to connect to that. And the only way to connect to chesed, which is Abraham, or any of the other attributes, it is to go through yesod. In other words, we have to rise to the level of tzaddikim. And while Shechem is the outer circle of yesod, alon moreh. Alon is a tree, moreh is a teacher, instructor. But if you take the hey of the moreh and you place it in the beginning of the word, because mem vav resh hey, hamor, then you get alon hamor, the tree of mor, as in myrrh, as in frankincense and myrrh, which is also one of out of the 11 incense species, which corresponds to the attribute of mercy. Tree of knowledge of good and evil. Myrrh, attribute of mercy. What is happening here? Melchizedek, the king of righteousness. When Abraham crossed through the land, he took his rightful place in the center of the world. And it just so happened to be that the world all around him, where he had to be, all around where he had to be, look outside, look at all around where you have to be, is covered with the filth of the serpent that had not yet been expelled from the body. V'aknani az ba'aretz, and the Canaanite was in the land. There you go. Magen Avraham, the shield of Abraham, right here. Once he understood this, and the Lord appeared to Abram. Here we go. He appeared to him, meaning he was always there, but now he let him see him because he was in the right place. And he said, to your seed I will give this land. And there he built an altar to the Lord who had appeared to him. Again, it says it twice, because to your seed, meaning he was only the beginning of something new. Of course, he'll take care of you, but it continues. And this is the difference between Jews and everyone else. While the rest of the Bible reading world believes that if they don't understand what's written according to their own understanding, of course, then it must be false. But the Jews actually follow what is written and understand that we are all connected and that we are a vital link in a chain that began with Abraham. And Abraham's the one that's tied to God. I don't need to understand everything. I don't need to understand a little, because in the grand scheme of things, I don't know nothing. But what I do know is that everything that I do and everything that I say and everything that I even think matters. And I know this by looking at Abraham. And when he came to this understanding, he built an altar. Vayaven sham mizbeach la'Hashem hanirah elav. Vayaven comes from the word lehavin, from binah, understanding. He understood, and that is where the altar came from. Is this a physical altar? Maybe, maybe not. We're about to see. And when he reached this understanding, he perfectly aligned who he was with what he was supposed to do and fully accepted and took it upon himself. Then he was raised even higher. And he moved from there to the mountain east of Bethel, and he pitched his tent. Are you paying attention? Bethel was to the west of the eye. Bethel was to the west, and the eye was to the east. And there he built an altar to the Lord, and he called in the name of the Lord. Where did God appear to Abraham? He was just taken up to the mountain, Mikedim, of old. He was standing on the spot. On that spot, who was Abraham rectifying? Adam. He was standing on the very same spot that God took the earth to mold Adam. Bet El, the house of mercy. El is mercy. Elohim is judgment. El is mercy. The house of God was to the west. The eye, a place of judgment, was to the east. But since we're moving upwards, you could take that east and west, and now you go north and south. He was right in it was like a sphere. You understand? Bethel, the house of God, is up, and the eye, a place of judgment. Punishment is down. Look what the Zohar says. If it has merit, it will rise up to the place of the altar which he made. And because there's two altars here, right? He made an altar and then another altar. And who is he who made the altar? And what is this altar that was made? The Holy One, blessed be he, had made the altar, which is the Shekhinah, the connection, and established it upon 12 stones. What are these 12 stones? According to the tribes of the sons of Jacob, to whom the word of God came, saying, Israel shall be your name. We're going to learn this when Jacob fled and he went to Lavan and stopped over there and he laid down in the 12 stones. But who else put together 12 stones? We'll see this. We're going to learn all about this. The altar that God had made is concealed from this world, as it is the supernal altar. And Michael the archangel, the supernal high priest, sacrifices the souls of the righteous upon it. It's not like killing them. In other words, he elevates the souls of the righteous. And it's at this place that Abraham called upon the name of the Lord. And how did Abraham call upon the name of the Lord? If there are words, there have to be actions as well. Don't forget. Vayat Ohalo. He pitched his tent. And that is the tent of Abraham. Harabait. Adam was formed there. Abraham established himself there. Isaac was sacrificed there. Jacob was given a promise there. That place is about 2 kilometers up the road, but it extends to the farthest corners of the earth. But it all starts from there. And it covers only those who have an understanding of how these things work, who have a desire to understand the truth of all things, not in their own understanding, not according to anyone else, but just according to what is. You're either in the tent or you're among the Canaanites. And if you're among the Canaanites, you might very well be one. The world of the serpent is coming undone. The covenant of Abraham is rising. Rise with it. Otherwise, it's fire and brimstone for you. God didn't place a rainbow on Sodom and Gomorrah, now did he? When you ask for God to speak to you and you say, God, answer me. Okay, first of all, be mindful of how you're praying. But if you ask for God to come and answer you, he won't do it in words because you'll just, explode. But he will do it through trials. So be prepared. How do I know? I read. And understand that if you dedicate your life and you seek truthfully, you're going to go through it. You're really going to go through it. But you have to recognize it and not fight against it. Abraham understood this. And he was seeking God his whole life. You have to tame it, own it, control it. And then once it has served its purpose, like Abraham, send it away. Thank you very much. You've been a great Yetzer Hara, but now go bug somebody else. Your work here is done. When this happens, then you know you're moving up in the world. One step closer, one step higher. And how does it all start? Lech Lecha. There is no other way. From your land, from your birthplace, and from your father's house. Because everything else is just an excuse. You want to call Abraham your father? Then start acting like him. Go. So thanks for joining me. I had fun. Did you? Y'all have a great week now and have a Shabbat Shalom. See you next time. Bye-bye.